it's Coach Tori, and this is Raising Runners. We talk running, fitness, mental health, and so many more topics. As the founder of a youth running program, I approach all of our conversations with our youth athletes in mind and kind of have a focus around those things. But as you will see, we are finding that all of these topics relate to runners and people who like to move and do fitness or anything like that. Relates to everybody. Check it out. Hey, it's Coach Tori.
And Jeff.
And this is Raising Runners. I felt like I gave enough time for it not to lag this time. No?
No, it's how quick I can hit the button that says got it. And I wasn't quick.
Gotcha.
So my back, it's now the lag is now gone, I think.
Gotcha. All right. Well, we are on, I'm like highlighting the wrong things. Part 2. It's already sounding like a debacle of an episode. We are on part 2 of our marathon podcast. We're still going to call it a Jeff special, but I am less sick. So back in action, as normal as can be. So before we get into all the things, maybe like the briefest of brief updates, because Jeff is chilling on his training right now.
Yeah, I mean, my update is I've
not training.
Actually given up training. This is rare for me. I mean, I think I've come to this, like every year I do this half marathon, and between the holidays coming on, you know, the letdown, or again, it's not like I didn't perform well. It's just the adrenaline letdown of having done a race, achieving this was probably my best race for a half marathon, and then the desire in the cold weather to go back out and run. It's just, this is like that perfect storm for me where I like, you know what, I think I'll start in January. So I've only run once this week. I'm not expecting to run the pretty much more than a few times between now and New Year's. That's my update.
You gonna keep lifting or biking or none of the above?
Yeah, I'm gonna get back into lifting slowly the week before Christmas. Just when I'll run a little bit before Christmas, just when I get to the New Year's, I can go back at it full bore. Because normally there's like a little bit of like, do half the amount of reps as a build up on lifting, so I don't get too sore. So yeah, I'll build up a little bit the week before New Year's, and then I'll go full bore New Year's forward. All in, no hesitation. I'm back to David Goggins Jr. / Baby Goggins.
All right. That's exciting. Right. I think I just put your marathon on the calendar. You can't see that far out, I don't think, on your thing, but May 5th, 4th, something like that.
Do you have a particular marathon that's named?
It's the what is it called? Rhode Island Marathon.
Rhode Island Marathon. Okay.
I mean, we can pick another one, but that is what I put on there.
I'm ready. I will be ready.
You will be ready.
How about you? What's your running update?
Have run twice this week. 20 minutes total. The crew was back. It was me, James, the stroller, the 2 dogs. So everyone's we're just trying to like work back into it. The adjustment of getting in the stroller, getting out in the cold, doing the whole thing.
How's the ribs?
It's like, yeah, it's like almost fine. I only feel it like very occasionally now. So that's like a huge plus. So now it's also just recovering from all the sick. Like running 20 minutes, I'm like out of breath. My watch today told me I had a very stressful day. I don't think it's ever said that. Just like in total, like it said like, this is a higher stress moment. You need to do a breathing exercise. And I'm always like, no, leave me alone. I drank coffee today. Sorry. My heart rate's spiking and I have anxiety. Like it happens where I'm like, but yeah, I was sitting on the couch watching Godzilla before this and it said, you had a particularly stressful day. I'm like, what the heck?
Now, is the dog that tripped you on probation, or is he still out? Is he allowed to go out and run with you?
She's allowed to come run, because the incident happened when she wasn't even on a leash in the yard. So, yeah, I don't run behind them in the yard anymore, trying to come inside in the dark. That is the mistake. But yes, she's allowed to come on runs, but I am a little like sterner with her whenever she's looking around. I'm like, hey, you make sure you're paying attention. I don't want you tripping me anymore.
Yeah, I know we're starting with injuries on this podcast, and
Yeah.
we're not going to cover cracked ribs because that's not usually a runner's injury.
No, no, but I do not recommend. I honestly thought it wouldn't matter, but that definitely made it worse. But yeah, so transitioning into injuries, we got a list of what, six injuries here. This is according to the Cleveland Clinic, but again, I think all of us runners, we have very common injuries, but then there's always outliers like the cracked rib. So the list goes plantar fasciitis, runner's knee, IT band syndrome, Achilles tendonitis, shin splints, and stress fractures. Before we get into them a little more, any of these that you've had?
Yeah, I've had two of them. I've had the Achilles tendonitis. Never had to do anything really with it, but it was for a while. It was really, really sore every time I would start running, and it would sort of stretch out and get more comfortable as I went. And then shin splints. I haven't had them in a long time, but I think every high school or college runner, anytime the season starts, you start going out and running if you haven't done it for months, and it feels like almost everyone on the team ends up with shin splints. How about
Yes.
how about you?
Let me see.
I
Like
know you.
all of
Yeah.
them, but stress fractures maybe. Um, Yeah, luckily I think I've never had stress fractures, and that is a huge I am very grateful. So I can also say the non-running injuries that make running harder though. Um Back injuries is not on here, but that is excruciating for running and super debilitating. Sorry, I was trying to type something in to get chat GPT to make a nice little summary of something for me, and I you talked less long that
Ah,
I was
well,
like, I'm still typing.
well, I know you
um
had the IT band one. That's been coming back and forth a number of times with you. And you
yes.
mentioned stress fractures. Obviously, that's that. At least when you look at the list, I mean, most of them are like sort of the overuse, and you sort of rest them up. Stress fractures is the ones that seems the most serious in my mind. Like that one's like, okay, now you've actually broken something, and you're going to have to actually take some serious time in recovering. I think in some of the books that we summarize, I think Cara Gaucho and a few other ones had a number of stress fractures. It's pretty common with runners.
Yes. Yes. And we're going to talk about nutrition a little bit later too, but that is a big one too. You mentioned overtraining, but underfueling can lead to a lot of these overuse injuries as well because our bodies just like aren't recovering and aren't equipped. But to answer your question, and then I'm done typing on my phone like a rude podcaster here. Plantar fasciitis, I think I had it as a younger person. Again, that's that really terrible pain underneath your foot every time you step down. I've heard people like equate it to like stepping on glass. And this is not just a runner's injury. Again, none of these things really are, but this happens a lot to, just anybody who's like walking. I know a lot of people who just have like standing up. My dog is snoring. Can you hear that?
I cannot.
Oh my gosh. Um, People who stand a lot, I know, my one grandma, she has plantar fasciitis like often. And people recommend different kinds of shoes and other kinds of things. A lot of the times we are getting those things because of tight calf muscles, and just like tightness, and inflexibility in the calf, Achilles, all those things back there. So the most recent time I had plantar fasciitis was when I was pregnant, which made like no sense because I was doing way less activity. But I think it was the strain on, everything. And I had to do a lot of like rolling of my calf muscles, strengthening my calf muscles, stretching, and all those things. And it went away, without having to do like the extra, like different shoes and all that stuff. But
Now,
another thing,
this
oh,
foam rolling or the sort of the maybe the lacrosse ball rolling on the foot, does that help? 'Cause that's like directly on that because it's the inflammation of the connective tissue between the heel and the toes underneath the foot. That's really where that inflammation is. Now, does
yeah.
that help to sort of do that rolling motion directly on it? It would feel like that might hurt like a lot.
Well, and so that's the thing about foam rolling, especially, is it is like commonly debated amongst different practitioners who work with people who have injuries. I know when I was in high school, and that's when I had shin splints and my first like IT band issues, and they're what they prescribed was like ice and all that stuff, but like rolling directly on your IT band and just like, and they were like, if it hurts, it's good, you're doing the right thing. There's a lot of people now who are like, No, you can roll
Mm.
around it to help loosen up the muscles around it, make it a little more comfortable. So like same thing with plantar fasciitis. I think I still did the like rolling on a frozen water bottle just to get like that movement of the ice. But no, when I did the foam rolling, I was rolling out my calf muscle to help loosen that up so it wasn't continuing to like pull on the underneath of my foot.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's a key point. I think you were, what you were making or made already, which was, some of these injuries are really a function of other parts of the body that aren't right, right? If you have ankle issues, that ends up causing sometimes knee pain because runner's knee is one of these ones that's a real general one in nature. It's not like a specific injury. It's basically pain in the knee, which can be on a number of different sides. And a lot of that usually comes from either foot issues or ankle issues, maybe sometimes hip issues. It's compensating. That knee joint is trying to compensate, and unfortunately, it's a joint that's designed to just go forward and backwards, not have too much pressure on one side or the other.
no, exactly. And that's why a lot of runners, and I know I try to have all of my runners do like hip and glute strengthening because that is going to help support the knee. So you're not getting those IT band issues, you're not getting those knee issues. And then I remember on the episode with training with Ellen, she talked about those calf raises, making sure your calves are strong and mobile because that's going to help with your Achilles issues and feet issues. And another thing I have runners do, especially when I was doing the like all the kid runners, because like you mentioned, every first runner usually is getting shin splints, right? We're often doing feet strengthening exercises because that's going to help with your shins. So really making sure you're doing all of those things because pretty much all of those issues are going to be fixed with more stability and strength around those key areas of like, above your foot, above your knees. And then stress fractures, again, we talked about is more of overuse, under fueling, under recovering. So those things are fixed with more of like a habit change type dealio.
Yeah, and that one
Um,
sounds like you're going to be out for 6 weeks if you've got a stress fracture. All the other ones,
yeah.
and you may disagree, but it feels like a lot of the other ones are, painful when you're running. Sometimes they don't hurt when you're not running. Like the Achilles tendonitis is one where I didn't really feel it other than maybe first thing in the morning when I would get up. But when I would start running, I would feel it initially, and then it would sometimes cool down and not be as painful. But I think once you get it sort of fixed a little bit, I mean, start back slowly is my recommendation. Like, yeah, go out there, test it a little bit, see how it feels, but don't over. It tends to be an overuse injury, or like for example, your Achilles sometimes has been shortened by the fact that you wear heels, for example, or shoes help shorten that sort of tendon. And when you're running, you're really stretching that tendon more than you would when you're walking. So I think it tends to be more of an overuse injury. And yeah, go back slowly. If it feels good for that first mile, maybe just stop. Next day, try to go a little further. Again, that's just my recommendation. I'm not a doctor. Can't pretend I am a doctor.
Yeah, well, and this is where those cross training ideas we talked about last week come into play as well. I know a lot of people with any kind of tendonitis, get on that bike, use your muscles in a different way, and that can definitely be helpful to keep things moving and fluid, but also not continuing to put the strain on things while it's trying to cool down. Anything else on injuries? I feel like injuries are pretty well documented, well covered.
Yeah,
Always go
yeah. I
to
guess
a doctor. I'll say
what,
that one.
what's that?
I said go to a doctor.
Yeah,
With these injuries, I know people have all kinds of different people to see, but make sure you're talking to somebody who knows what they're doing to help you. Because I also know as runners, we love to just give our unsolicited advice on like, you have this and you have that, and this sounds like my thing, as we're doing right here, right now, currently, but also just check with some kind of doctor, maybe.
yeah. Because like what you may think is a just some runner's knee might be a stress fracture. Right? Yes,
Exactly.
so you don't know. So yeah, if it persists, or even if initially you initially have it and you feel like you have the option to go to a doctor, go to a doctor. Um, so yeah, I think that probably nails those. They tend to be much more happening during training, but now we're getting into race day essentials. Now all
Yes.
that's behind you. By the way, injuries are very common in runners. All those exercises and things that Tor has talked about, like the foot exercises, are critical to prevent them. Cross training, strength training, all of that great stuff that I say poo poo to sometimes.
Yeah.
They're very important. But now we're on race day. Now we've achieved all that. We're better. It's now race day essentials. Ready, go. Race day.
Race day. All right. So again, I think a lot of this, it's all feeling like deja vu because I feel like we've talked about similar topics, not even just last time, but in other things recently with all of our running debates and whatnot. But pre-race preparation, and of course, we always say nothing new on race day. Don't be a Jeff. Don't get your new gear, new whatever. Don't do that. So first is nutrition. And I know a lot of people um, who freak out about the taper, right? That's definitely a thing that happens, but also people can be a little confused on eating during the taper. If you're running less, what does that look like? It probably looks the same for most of us, right? We're running a little bit less and then a little bit less. I don't think you need to be restricting calories. You need to make sure you're eating stuff that's healthy because also, and I don't know if it's in here in our notes, but you don't want to be changing a whole bunch because you don't want to be getting sick before race day as well, whether it is stomach sick or, catching a cold because you're not eating enough or, you stop taking your vitamins or whatever it is. So, just other things to keep in mind, keeping your nutrition balanced, making sure you're having your carbs, proteins, fats. Definitely don't try new food on race day. Since we are talking marathon, you need to be fueling during your run. So you should have had that tested during your long runs, which we talked about when we talked about long runs last week. And it's definitely good to make sure you have those things ahead of time. So during your taper time, making sure you're going out to the running store, whatever it is, to get your gels, goos, fuel, all those things, staying hydrated, making sure you're getting your electrolytes prior to race day too. You don't want to just wake up in the morning, chug a whole bunch of water if you haven't been drinking all week, and have to pee the entire time going there. So definitely don't overhydrate. And then, making sure, like I said, those electrolytes, because that is going to help with actually absorbing, using that water. You're not just peeing it out, right? Anything on, I guess, like that initial thoughts there, nutrition, hydration?
No. I think that you nailed that one completely. I got nothing else to add that one. You want to go
All
to
right.
dress for success?
Dressing for success. So we also talked about this when we talked about baggy versus compression clothes, but making sure you are wearing running gear that you are comfortable in, that you've tested out. Again, I'm someone who could get excited about getting like a new race outfit. Maybe don't do that unless it's like a new version of the same shirt you've been wearing, because we talked about this before of like, if it rubs a certain way, if it moves a certain way, if you sweat different in a different material. So making sure you have your moisture wicking, breathable clothing that's also suited for the weather. Check the weather. Race day prep, check the weather. Especially if you're traveling and you're not familiar with what 50 degrees looks like in this area, because 50 degrees can look completely different depending on where you are, humidity, all that stuff. So making sure you're prepared for that and packed a bunch of extra things. And yes, go with what you've trained in. Make sure you have your shoes. No new shoes on race day. That
Yeah,
would be
even if it's the same,
insane.
even if it's the same brand as you normally wear, don't go out and say I'm going to break out a brand new pair today, man, just for this race.
Yes. And especially now with like the rise of the super shoes where, they only have a limited amount of miles in them. So people don't want to be wearing them for every long run up to race day, but you do want to have run in them, know how you feel in them, know how they like everything. You want to make sure that it all makes sense. You've had at least one good run in them before you're wearing them on race day too. But yeah, definitely don't do new shoes, new socks, none of that stuff.
Yeah. On the apparel side, the one thing I do is I do put band-aids over my nipples. I do find that the
Hot tip from Jeff.
yeah, that was one where it's like it can be very painful for the following 2 days afterwards. It just if that fabric rubbing up and down, you would think like, oh, what's the big deal? No, it hurts.
Yeah, I know it is shocking
And
every
I'm a
time you
tough guy.
say.
I'm a really tough guy.
Yeah, totally. It's shocking every time you bring this up because as a sports bra wearing person, it does not come up as an issue. So, um, I don't know why guys just don't wear sports bras. You could do that.
A sports bro.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, that was a good tip on race day wearing things, what to wear. Strategy. So make sure if you have a coach, obviously your coach is going to be talking to you about what your race day strategy is. We talked a little bit about this, I think, with our long run as well.
Yeah.
But yes, remember to try to stick with your pace. try not to go too fast when you're starting out. Don't get caught up in the excitement in the crowd. Although later in the race, getting caught up in all of those things is going to be great to help get you to the finish line. But trying to have at least a plan that is flexible, so you know, like, this is where I should be starting. This is what I know I'm comfortable with. A lot of bigger races are going to have like a pacing group, which is always nice to find them. Those people really do an amazing job staying on pace, and also usually they're like helping stay motivated and things like that, which is great.
No, they
So
are
if you're,
good. They're great, by the way. I didn't mean to cut you off. I mean, it
oh
was
yeah,
no, they are. They're super energetic. They're like they're. I mean, they're hired. It's an organization that just does these things, that has pace setters, and it is great to get in with them because you do feel like you're part of a family when you're running, and it does help pass the time. I would say if it's not your first marathon, so your first marathon, I'd say be very conservative in what you want to achieve. Just try to finish and feel good finishing. And if you can, stay with your pace group that's conservative. But then in the second half, feel free to maybe try to move up a group if you're really feeling good, or just stick with your group and try to stay the course. Now, if it's your second race or third or fourth or many, don't be afraid to blow up and just you know you've already achieved the objective of finishing a marathon. Now you're trying to get a great time. So ideally, I think a marathon should be run consistently to get your best time, right? Or that would be ideally. If you could run the same split nonstop the entire time, would be the ideal situation. In my opinion, I go a little bit more conservative on the front end with saving a little bit more for the back end, so I psychologically feel good running the second half faster and passing people. That's just again my approach. But I think don't be afraid to go out hard, and if it's not your first or second, to try to get maybe a PR.
yeah, love it.
I've
Go
blown
for
up
it.
on three of my four marathons, so I know all about going out hard and blowing up. So
It works.
yeah,
Um, Mindset, we talked about this last week.
yeah,
Oh
we
wait,
did.
did I talk about fueling strategy? No, I didn't. We kind of talked about fueling strategy with nutrition. But again, making sure with your race strategy, you have your fueling strategy, not just what am I eating, but when am I eating this? When am I taking this fuel? When am I drinking? If you are using the stations on the run, I do caution everyone from doing that, just because it is always better to be prepared for yourself. The half marathon I did with some friends this year, even there was one table that was supposed to have gels or something in addition to like the water Gatorade, and it just wasn't there because who knows why. And so, everyone who was planning on that was like, oh yeah, I was really looking forward to that, and then didn't have it. That kind of really like messed me up. I started to bonk around, mile 11 out of 13. So just like things to think about. It is nice that they do provide those things. But again, you just never know what's going on.
Yeah, I'm a
Um,
convert now. I'm onto the gels. I'm huge
oh,
gel fan. I was all about the natural food like two marathons ago, and
yeah.
it killed me. I did the gels for the last half marathon. Love it. The other subtle advice would be, just make sure whether you're getting the ones with caffeine or without caffeine. Um,
Yes. And know what you have.
yeah, know what you end up having, as you said, know when you're planning to take them. I mean, you don't want to take one every mile. That's not the way it works. Just figure out how many, you're looking to get a few hundred calories, every 30, 45, 50 minutes, right? So I think it's, maybe run 5 miles and then, you're doing a gel every 5 miles or so. So I think there's a little bit of timing for that. Um, and then two, I think in the back half, I do see, I think Alan was the one I listened to, and he talks about using caffeine in the last couple of the gels he takes. He may take 4 or 5 gels during a race, but the last two are the ones he has caffeine because there's a solid psychological effect of having caffeine, and that is your perceived effort is different. It's a little bit less. So even though you may be going harder, you don't perceive yourself as running as hard. So it feels a little bit easier than maybe it really is. So the
I
effect of,
like it.
yeah,
Yeah, another quick little nutrition tip too. If you start to feel, even if you're following your plan, you start to feel like I can't do this, I need to give up. Take some fuel in, because oftentimes it is our brain starting to starve itself. Well, not starve, but like, it's losing the things that it needs, and it's like, this is too hard. So take a little hit of whatever you have, and keep it pushing. And then with that mindset, staying positive, we talked about that last week with like a mantra or something. Same thing with visualization. Again, practicing these things before race day. I know this is in your race day. What is this category? Race day essentials, but you definitely should have practiced that but some people like to write it down on them, on their hand or something so they can see it. But just make sure you have an idea of what you're going to do to help yourself stay focused and motivated. And then I think more importantly, here we go, a couple things, race logistics.
Yep.
And I think a lot of like bigger races or just like, I mean, most races now at this point are going to be sending like pre-race emails where they're giving you all the info of like, this is the time packet pickup is, this is where you need to be. I know some places are even really good about like, these are some accommodations that are nearby or close to the start, places to park, like all those things. So make sure you're paying attention to those emails. If not, I also see a lot of people on Facebook in running groups asking like, has anyone been to the Philly Marathon? Can you tell me great places to do XYZ things? But making sure you know when you're going to be there, what you need to be doing so you're not showing up late, getting lost, getting confused, getting that extra like frazzle for no reason. And then just adding that stress that's going to make it so much harder before you're
Yeah.
even running.
It must be an age thing because I know that when I was younger, my parents would always do dry runs for places they had to go they haven't gone before, and now
Yeah.
I'm the guy that does that. So I do like to go the day before just to know where I'm going to park because again, it does get stressful if you're like an hour before the time frame and now you're like I can't find a place to park. There tends to be a lot of people coming downtown or wherever you're going to for a run. So yeah, that can add to a level of stress you don't want to have. And then are you checking your bag, not checking your bag? Or am I just going to throw my clothes to the side of the road? Like, what am I doing? So just think ahead of time about all those things and what's the logistics of how does the bag check process work? And yeah, as you said, read that email. Usually has a lot of great information. It tells you where you can park. Don't be afraid if it's not that far away. Do a dry run. Just drive the day before, just so you know exactly where you're going, how long it's going to take, so you don't have any issues in the morning.
Yeah, well, a lot of these places too also have like almost the ability for like a built-in dry run because a lot of them have packet pickup like the day before, whatever it is. So you're almost like forced to drive there or drive close to whatever the start line is ahead of time, which is,
Yep.
inconvenient for some, but also like nice that it has that built-in thing in there. But yeah, the parking thing, actually the half marathon that we did this year, the person I was driving thought they knew where the parking lot was. They were like, "Oh, I parked here a couple years ago. This is great." Couldn't find it, so we drove in circles all, like for 30 minutes in the morning. I'm like, thank goodness we were early, right? So just, things to do. And the thing about bag check too, I mean, if anybody's like me and you're a little like you like to hold on to your stuff and you're skeptical about handing over all of your items to strangers. I will say I've never had an issue with like a bag check. I don't know if you have, but like you think
No.
it looks a little sus because you're like, all right, I'm just taping this little number to my bag and then I'm handing it to a stranger who's now just like dumping it in this field behind them in like a little corral, right? You're just like, I'm never getting my stuff back. But I've
Yeah.
never had a problem, never lost anything.
I
It's
never have
actually usually
either.
pretty quick.
Yeah, I never have either. It's always been pretty efficient getting it. Although I will say I'm not willing to put my wallet or phone in the bag.
Yeah.
It is always just clothes that you sort of wore for warm up. But it's still nice to have, and it is really quick and efficient to get the stuff afterwards.
Agreed. Yeah. Warming up. So once you're there, you've checked in, you've done all the things, getting your warm up on, making sure you're doing a dynamic warm up. Again, this is something you probably should have been practicing at some point, whether it's before your long runs, easy runs. I usually have people doing them before their speed day, and just because it kind of all makes sense. But doing some kind of dynamic warm up that's going to activate your muscles. Kind of also, it's going to signal to your body like we're getting ready to do some work, those kinds of things. But you don't want to never have done a dynamic warm up and then today you
Yep.
start doing it because anybody who's done those things, it can be exhausting. Like especially the first time when you're not used to doing all of the different drills or whatever you're doing in that. So if you're also like exerting a bunch of extra energy, that's probably not a great idea. But
Yeah,
doing
no,
something that's getting you moving.
no, I'm a static stretch guy, and I know that's
Yeah,
completely wrong. I do a
it
couple toe touches and
is.
I'm ready to go. So yeah, so maybe just give a couple examples of what you mean by dynamic warm up.
Sure. So, I mean, the ones that I like to do, it often just is like a walking format, but like, some walking lunges. You can do like a walking heel sweep so that you're getting that same like toe touch idea, but you're doing like a single leg as you're walking, get your toes flexed up. So you're stretching all the back of the leg. I like to do some inchworms. So you're kind of like activating your core and move. Why is that funny?
I just don't. I'm just picturing now an inchworm, like
Oh,
doing the worm dance.
maybe there's a less like little kitty name for yeah, I'm like as I'm trying to describe these things, I'm picturing all the names that the kids call them in Run Club, and I'm like, none of these are the actual real
Yeah,
name.
I'm just being
Um
immature, laughing at the inchworm. So go ahead. Sorry.
um So yeah, so a lot of things more of that kind of fashion. And then, doing some like A skips, B skips, high knees. I don't do a whole bunch of those before like a longer run though, but those things can be good. Any like lateral movements, maybe some side shuffles, to activate those muscles. But yeah, I like a good lunge, side lunge, heel sweep, maybe like a tabletop toe
Yep.
touch situation. Um, so yeah, I mean, there's so many leg swings. Everybody loves a leg swing. You see a lot of runners just like congregating around a tree or a post. So those are all good ones to do. But again, I think a lot of us also like to gravitate towards the static stretch, but no, don't do that before a run because you're just going to make your muscles
Yeah.
looser and not snappy and ready to go.
Yeah. All right. So then we can go into etiquette, which I don't know if I've ever had a problem with etiquette. Although the one, like, no, I'll say it differently. I've only had one problem with etiquette, and that is the person that's gets to the water station and stops suddenly to get the
Oh,
water. Right. We're all running in a line to grab the water because we're all lined up. That person that grabs the water and stops. So just if you, try not to be that person. I've probably been that person before myself. Just try to get your water and move over a little bit to allow others to sort of get by and get their water as well. That's the only problem I think I've ever had with etiquette. How about you?
um, no, honestly. And so actually I was thinking we need to do an episode on running slash race etiquette because I've heard so many people talk about like different kinds of running etiquette that I've like never in my life heard of. And again, you lifelong runner, same lifelong runner. And I'm like, what? But no, yeah, I don't think I've ever really had an issue. Definitely not in a race. I feel like people kind of know the flow of things. They know where they're supposed to be going. Everyone's kind of like happy to be there and respectful. So, not,
I'll throw a second one in that has come up though. Now that I'm thinking about it,
oh no.
it's when you get a group of like four people who like are like friends and they're running straight across. And it's like, okay,
Okay.
hold
Yeah.
on. It's a very narrow path we're on. It's very difficult to get by. I now have to run into the side, like, look for that opportunity to sort of sprint by them. I'm trying to, you're trying to run a nice even pace. You don't really want to have to sprint by a quick group of people. So again, just trying to be cognizant of there could be people behind you who are running at a faster pace and therefore trying to get by.
Yes. And then also kind of with that, like this is why I always struggle with like the running etiquette that I see people talking about. I feel like it's kind of like general, like walking in crowds or like in public etiquette as well. So like,
Life etiquette, yeah.
right. So, we do follow the flow of traffic, usually how things are going. You don't want to like flat tire somebody. So like making sure you are giving space and knowing as you're running. I mean, if you're running with proper running form, you're not going to be kicking your feet out really in front of you. They should be landing on your body. So it should be kind of hard to make that motion. But again, don't be getting so close that you could potentially be clipping somebody. And also don't be going right in front of someone and then slowing down, just like you wouldn't with a car or if you're walking. So yeah, like those things I kind of just feel like they're just such general thoughts, but I mean, find some space, run, do your thing, make sure you're not stopping in front of other people. If you can do your best. Um, I know some people like if they're going to start walking, they make sure they move off to the side a little bit. Just like kind of things like that. Again, don't spend your whole day like worrying about others, but
Yeah.
as someone who
Well,
like overthinks,
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's fair. And as you said, you're going to do a future episode on etiquette. So
yes, we will talk more about that at some point. But a big thing is like going into the right starting corral. Usually going to be going at the right pace then. So you're starting with people that are who would be running similar to you. You're not running a 12-minute mile with a 6-minute mile people because they might actually get a little annoyed that you're kind of in front of them. Just things like that. And then yeah, being respectful. But we will have a future episode about that because there are some interesting things people say. We talked a little bit about hydration stations already,
yep.
making sure you're planning ahead, making sure you're getting water and electrolytes in while you're running. But
We talked
again,
about
those things are,
conditions. Yep. Sorry.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And then weather conditions, we did talk about that too. Making sure you're dressing in layers. If you have your sunscreen on, you need that. Um, knowing what the temperature is going to feel like wherever you are, but then also knowing that you are going to be running. Not that like littering clothing is a good idea, but be prepared to potentially lose some items if you are starting in more things where it's cold. There's always an option if you have to. And then have fun, obviously, like that's really dumb to say, but appreciate that you are out there, you're getting to run. There's usually, I mean, again, depending on what race you sign up for, but there is going to be crowds, there's going to be scenery, there's going to be other people who you would think love doing what you like to do. So, it really can be super fun. And then obviously enjoy the accomplishment that you actually did it. So try to enjoy race day and not just like completely stress out. Be nice if you have people there to support you who are, caring for you, watching, you run, and then like being able to celebrate afterwards. But all those things, make sure you are enjoying it as well.
Yeah, I'm more of a people watcher. I do like seeing people who are jumping around and having fun and high-fiving people. I'm not that guy, but I do enjoy seeing other people being that guy.
Yeah, no, yeah, there's always like different characters there for sure. And then, lots of people make signs that are kind of funny. So, there's always like things to see and to be a part of. Depending again, if you like pick a fun race, there's music and whatever else along the course. Getting into nutrition and hydration, which I feel like we have said 50 times already.
Yeah, I feel like we're going to be beating a dead horse here.
But we'll
Um,
just cover it very briefly.
all right.
Um, did you want to go or do you want me to go?
Oh, no, yeah, I'll start. Sure. What the heck?
All right.
So I think we talked a little bit about it before, right? Which is, the daily nutrition and hydration. Again, have a balanced diet. Make sure you get carbohydrates in your body. Daily hydration is important, not just on race day or preparing for the race. Or it's important to really get that eight ounce glasses a day at a bare minimum. And in those hot days, I know my watch tells me I need like 120 to 150 ounces and not just 64. So it can vary greatly if you're doing like your long run on a hot day and you're sweating a lot. So, be cognizant of that. And then the electrolytes, I think we talked about that, is both, preparing for races and during the race. That, there's water stations, and they also have, Gatorade, which obviously includes electrolytes. So be cognizant of, if you're sweating a lot, you really do want to make sure you get some electrolytes, and primarily salt. I think is the sodium is one of the main ones. And there is a condition you can get if you sort of overhydrate and don't replace your electrolytes. You can have an electrical imbalance in your body and cause yourself some significant issues. Again, it's rare, so I wouldn't be afraid of that, but I would be cognizant of, getting electrolytes on a periodic basis.
On that topic, not to completely cut you off, but to completely cut you off, um, I'm drawing a huge blank, but the player's plate is written by Emily something. She was on the show a while back talking about her book, The Player's Plate, but she had, was it hypnotremia? Am I saying any of that right? But she goes into it. Her book is great. Also can be geared towards younger audiences as well. So it could be for like high school athletes. She's currently a collegiate athlete. My gosh, my brain is like, the sick is messing me up. But she talks about her experience. She went into a coma
Oh, wow.
from eating too healthy. And I put that in quotes because obviously it was not healthy. But she was thinking she was doing all the right things, hydrating, no salt, no anything in her diet. So she talks about all kinds of, she has lots of fun recipes and stuff in her book too. So that's a great one. And she was on the show, and I think she did like a little book tour on a bunch of podcasts. So if you search The Player's Plate, you should find her chatting about a lot of things. She's also a gluten-free athlete. So anybody who's gluten-free, she has some suggestions in there. And then another one is the Planted Runner, Claire Bartholic, who has a podcast, and the book is called The Planted Runner. She's a plant-based marathoner, but she talks about lots of like running tips, food, different kinds of things. She was on the show talking about her book at one point a while back as well. But those are two really good books, I think, to check out if you are interested in being more serious about your nutrition for performance, because they both have really realistic views on how to fuel as a runner and like a regular person as well.
No, that's fantastic. Yeah, nice insight. We talked about, that's like everyday life. Then there's sort of pre-race nutrition, which obviously we talked about maybe two podcasts ago, as well as a little bit before on this podcast. But again, carb loading, that's something you really want to do like anywhere from 1 to 2 or 3 days ahead of time. And it's really not changing your diet radically. It really is just increasing your carbs a little bit more than maybe what they naturally would be. Have that second bagel or have that bagel in the morning, and there's a lot of things that are carb based, but don't shift your diet entirely to carbs away from fats and proteins. It really is just increasing your carb load a bit more than what it naturally is on a normal basis, and then hydrate more than you maybe normally would prior to a race. So if you're drinking that 8 ounce glasses a day, maybe up it to 10 as you get closer to a race, just so you make sure your tank is full when you get to the race. Not your bladder, but your tank as well as far as hydration goes.
Right.
Um, yeah, and then race day nutrition. I think we did talk about this last time a
Mm-hmm.
bit, right? And I think it's really just important to, you know what you're going to eat pre-race. Get that meal in an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours beforehand, whatever's right for you. Make sure it's, I think the normal diet that I see a lot of runners doing, it's sort of the oatmeal, honey, fruits, dates, nut butters. There's a lot of different things that people, do, but make sure it's something that you've done before.
Do you know
Um,
what Kipchoge eats before every race?
no, I don't.
Oatmeal.
Oh, there you go. Yeah,
He
and
says it.
it's a staple for a lot of runners, and it is good for you. I do it.
Oh,
I'd say I average it every other day. It's my diet.
yeah.
Unfortunately, the other day I'm eating a chocolate croissant, so that's might be
Balance.
carb loading, but it's probably not the healthiest thing. How about post-race nutrition? I think we talked about that, just recovering and getting proteins to rebuild your muscles. That's probably the most important thing, sort of shifting from, where you do a little bit of carb loading before the race, you do a little bit of, I'll call it protein loading after the race, just to make sure your body has sufficient protein to rebuild the muscle, because it is a lot of breakdown that your body has. And make sure you rehydrate too. That's, you do get, even if you're staying hydrated during the race, you still may be draining your tank and your cells of all of the hydration it naturally has. So you
Yeah.
really want to fill up and completely fill up your tank again the next several days, not just drink a bunch of water the hour after. It's the next day or two that you just want to have as much hydration as you can get, um, to help your body recover. And then supplements, I think, are important. We talked a little bit about it before, but I think a lot of runners, iron, vitamin D, omega-3 fatty acids, in my opinion. I mean, I think I take a multivitamin, have a healthy diet. That's probably covering 99% of the issues you could have. And then it's really if you have a sort of a deficiency in some area that you really want to make sure you're getting a physical on an annual basis and getting things checked out for blood work and urine and that type of stuff. Anything else
Yeah.
on the? I will confess I do take creatine periodically before a race, and again, it's debatable whether that's helpful for endurance athletes. I only do it like the week before, because what creatine does do is it does um, help build muscle, but it also helps to recover. But it does also make you hold water, so it may help with hydration, but it may make you heavier for your race. So there is some debates on whether it's good or bad. I don't know if I've seen any definitive guidance on it.
Trail Runner Nation has a good episode, and I don't remember what it is called, but I feel like if you search Trail Runner Nation and creatine, you might be able to find it. Or you can always email me and I will send it to you because I have it saved in a bunch of different places. I just can't remember what it's called right now, but he does talk about, or they have, I forget who is on, but talking about the use of creatine for endurance athletes and also just like older people in general. And yeah, it's super informative. I think he talks a little bit of science, but also just like explains things to us regular folk who want to just understand, like, should I do it or should I not do it? So that is another good podcast to check out that talks about creatine. Um,
Yeah, because I've heard a number of podcasts talk about it from a standpoint. You mentioned uh, just general health and longevity. It is one that I think people do recommend in the longevity space, that it can help with preventing some diseases that come with longevity. Now, again, I don't know that there's a lot of science backing all this up. It may be more anecdotal than proven clinical trials. Um, so I think that the jury still may be out on it a little bit. So just be mindful of it, do some research, and go from there.
Yeah, definitely check out that podcast, but also ask a doctor or someone. Again, most running coaches, I know with my running coach certification, I am not allowed to recommend supplements. Um
Don't recommend creatine though. I am not certified and I can recommend creatine.
so yeah, so I cannot recommend things to my runners. And if they have questions, I can kind of like answer what I this is what the label says. But yeah, always kind of default to a doctor. But there's definitely additional certs that you can get that allow you to legally be able to recommend supplementation.
Yeah,
But vitamins are always good. I think people always
yeah, and
say
I
that.
joke around that I'm recommending it, but I'm really just saying what I do, right? It's
Yeah.
what I do. I don't know whether it's great or not great. I mean, I've sort of felt great about it doing it a year ago. I also used it for the marathon like the week before, and it felt like maybe it was a disadvantage that last time. So I don't know if I know one way or the other. I'm sort of like doing it via anecdote as well. All right, so that covers my caveat of saying I'm not really recommending.
Sponsored by creatine.
Sponsored by 80/20 and creatine are my two sponsors.
At least you have
Yeah,
a sponsor, right?
yeah, there you go.
All right,
You
moving
mentioned
on.
Kipchoge, so maybe should we go into like some of this
Yes.
stuff? I thought
Let's get into it as like time is now ticking away.
yeah, I thought we just highlight a couple of the again, maybe not everyone's into some of the world class marathoners, but there's a couple of special ones out there. I thought we just would mention, and again, they're probably worth if you get a chance to watch on YouTube one of the old marathons. I say old; it could be over the last like 2023 marathons. Some of them were absolutely phenomenal. We talked about one of them, which will come back up in a minute, the London 2023, I think it was. But Kipchoge, I'll start with him if you don't mind.
Oh, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, I
Breaking
mean
two.
he's the goat, right? He's the goat of being the greatest of all time marathoner, and I would say his accolades, go from he's got let's see 2014. I think he's run maybe I'm going to say a dozen of the majors, being the 6 marathon majors. He's won 10 of the 12 times he's run those majors. He didn't win in Berlin in 2013, and most recently the Boston Marathon in 2023. So if you look at the marathon and the world record, and who's sort of like the top of their game, it kind of comes and goes. Like every few years, there's someone that's at the top of the game. Kipchoge, and then we're going to talk about one of the women in a few minutes. Um, they've been the very few that have been at the top of the game for 10 years, right? He won Chicago in 2014, right? So that's almost 10 years ago. Um, Berlin in 2015, he won, London in 15, London in 16, Berlin in 17, London in 18, Berlin in 18. I mean, I can keep going down the list: London, Tokyo, Berlin, 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 all the way up through 2023. So he's been the best of all time. And I know you watched and referenced a few times on here, chasing being the first person to run a marathon under 2 hours. I guess it was two projects that they tried to do, and he was the athlete that was sort of featured in those. Want to give any color on those?
I recommend anyone watch Breaking Two, runner or not. My husband is not a runner, and I feel like he really liked that movie. He thinks Kipchoge's amazing. So it is just like a likable movie, inspiring, and he's just such a likable guy too. I think everything about him shows like what greatness can be as an athlete. You don't have to be aggressive in certain sense. You don't have to be standoffish like we see a lot of athletes in other sports, or even in this world. He really he wants everyone to be their most amazing self, and just talks about like his humble life and all kinds of things. So I could like gush all day and say nothing at the same time. But definitely watch Breaking Two. It's interesting to see that project because you don't actually see everything, but they do talk a lot about their why they picked the runners that they picked, what they kind of go through to get ready for it, what that looked like. And then I definitely encourage people to actually watch the run that he did that broke the 2 hour barrier, because that was also just like so amazing to see. And, we know it does not count as a new marathon record, but we see it and it happens. So it is possible.
Yeah,
So
it proves that someone can run, a human can run 26.2 miles in under 2 hours. They're going to prove that point, even if it's not an official marathon.
exactly. So yeah, so definitely check that out. I know he has another movie. I believe it's just Kipchoge, and there might be like a colon after that with something. I don't remember exactly what the rest of the movie talks about. I haven't seen it, but I mean, I'm interested in watching anything that he is in just because he kind of radiates like positivity and greatness. So
Yeah,
definitely check that out.
yeah, he's probably the greatest spokesman for the sport, right? I mean, the unfortunate part is now he's 39 years old. By the way, just for stature, he is 5'6" and about 115 pounds. He seems a lot taller than that
I was
when I
gonna
see him.
say I'm shocked. I would have thought he was taller.
Yeah, I would have said he was like 5'10".
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
I think he's like 5'6", 115 pounds. He looks taller than that, and unless Wikipedia was wrong in its description. Um,
Wikipedia.
but but he is 39 years old, which so unfortunately I think he's at the tail end. I mean, he's been great for so many years, and it was only just a couple months ago that his world record was broken by the next athlete we're going to highlight.
Here we go.
Yeah, Calvin Kiptum. Actually, it's Kelvin Kiptum. Um, he's also, by the way, Eliud Kipchoge is a Kenyan runner. Calvin Kiptum, basically a teammate, also a Kenyan runner. But Calvin is only 24 years old. He is 5'11", 143 pounds. Um, he is the current world record holder at 2 hours and 35 seconds. And I feel like that race he had basically passed the torch from Kipchoge. Oh, by the way, Kipchoge is the two-time Olympic champ right now. So he's 2016 and 2020 Olympic marathon champion. He is planning to run Paris, and I think most people will be rooting for him, if not their own country. But um, yeah, he's going for the third. I suspect Calvin Kiptum may be someone who could potentially beat him for that final three in a row, three-peat. But yeah, so I think Calvin, he's only run I think two marathons. His claim to fame is run 2 hours and 35 seconds, but two, I think he's run negative split, being his second half marathon has been faster than the first half of the marathon, which is somewhat rare. I think these guys tend to have a little bit slower second half, and he's one that's been pulling away in the second half, and he has looked strong. He's young, he's fit. So I think he's a guy to watch out for. He may be, if he stays healthy, the next Kipchoge.
Yeah, I don't really know much about him because I don't totally follow long distance running like that unless there's super standout people, which obviously he is now and I'm aware of him, but I did not really know prior to. Um can you talk a little bit about his training, his weekly training? I feel like you had some notes on that.
Yeah, I think
Not to
he's
recommend anyone do this, but
no. I think his total mileage is 150 plus miles per week.
crazy.
150 to 170 miles per week. Again, I think you have to be 24 and a genetic freak to be able to withstand that kind of pounding. Um,
Yeah.
so there's probably it's like a professional athlete, right? It is the best running back in the NFL. It's a guy that is that talented, but he's also genetically gifted to be able to take that kind of that pounding. He does basically runs, like he runs at altitude. Um, so he does run somewhere in the probably 4,500 feet. I think those are 1,200 meters as far as height goes. So he does run at high altitude. Um, and so he's running 30 to 40 kilometers. So 40 kilometers is essentially just short of a marathon for his long runs. So again, talented guy. And he looks like he could be the next Kipchoge.
Well, going from high highs on people I love and people I am willing to start following to low lows, someone who I've probably the only person I've ever publicly talked negatively about on the podcast. Let's hear it.
Alberto Salazar, you must be referring to.
Boo.
Yeah,
Sorry to his family. I shouldn't do that.
yeah, and it's unfortunate because like he did. I guess a couple of things. One, Calvin Kiptum has not won an Olympic medal yet, and he's got that in common with Alberto Salazar. Even though Alberto
Oh,
Salazar was the most talented marathoner from 1980 to 1982, 1980 is the year we boycotted the Olympics, so he did not get the opportunity to
Uh,
run the Olympics. So he did not get his opportunity to win that gold medal. Um, but he did win like three consecutive, I guess, New York City marathons and a Boston marathon. So if I'm reading the stats right. Um, and I think his most famous one was very hot day for the Boston Marathon in 2000, sorry, 1982. I think it was one of his signature performances. It's called A Duel in the Sun, and there's a sort of a grainy, short little film about it as well. Him and Dick Beardsley ran that marathon all the way till the end. So they were together all the way through basically mile 25, and then Alberta pulled ahead at the last minute to win it by probably one of the closest margins, maybe a few seconds ahead of Dick Beardsley. So the hot day, I think, took a lot out of him, and I think his career sort of faded after that one.
is that the race where he died after? Sorry if I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, I don't know if he actually died after that one. I know he died on, I think it was on Nike's campus. Didn't he technically died at one point in time and was brought back. So, but yeah, I think he did go to the hospital after that. There were several days in the hospital. I don't know if he technically died after that or not.
Hmm.
Um, and I think at one point in time in the New York City Marathon, they thought he had set the world record at 2:08:33. But unfortunately, in remeasuring the course, they decided it was about 148 meters short. And then when they recalibrated it, that cost him about 27 seconds. So he missed the world record by a few seconds. So he didn't
It's
get credit for that.
crazy that that's possible.
Yeah,
That like the amount of times that it happens still, it
yeah,
shouldn't happen ever.
yeah. I guess I'll give him a break. Like in 1982, I guess stuff like that tended to maybe happen more often. It wouldn't happen, I wouldn't think today, just given how accurate things can be. Um,
Yeah.
but he's talking about 148 meters, like over a course of 26 miles. You would have think you know, just cutting a few corners or extending a few corners, it would have been, you know, how are you measuring that? Is it from the center of the line? Is it cutting each corner? Like what's the point at which you do that? So anyway, so if it hadn't been for the Nike project, he would have had like a great career and probably would be maybe in the discussion as one of the greatest marathoners of all time. His he's been
Post
tarnished.
running life. Yeah.
Yeah, he's been tarnished significantly by the accusations and the fact he got barred from coaching as a result of the Nike project. So
Yeah.
that's Alberto, and I don't know. Those are the three sort of I picked. I think those are sort of the biggest, some of the bigger names. I wanted to pick an American with Alberto, but there's a few others. Bill Rogers, a few others marathoners you could. But to be perfectly honest, you know, Galen Rupp might be one of the higher finishers in a marathon that we've got in the last 10 years, 15 years.
Yeah. He's
We're
also on my
talking about,
negative list.
yeah, I know. He's also tied to Alberto. So let's transition to some great women, right?
Yes, let's do that
All
before
right.
I
And
sound grumpy.
yeah, similar to Calvin Kiptum, I'll start with maybe Assefa. She's the woman who most recently set the world record. And by the way, just for context, she knocked 2 minutes off the world record.
Crazy.
That is crazy. I mean, it's now, it's 2 hours, um, 13 minutes. No, 11 minutes is what I think the world
Yes.
record is now.
To
Um,
11:53, I
yeah.
think.
So as we said before, that's only right now 11 minutes behind the men. So I do think. Do you think women will ever catch men in the marathon? They're closing in.
I know. So I
It's a
shouldn't
weird
say
sport.
no.
Yeah, it's a weird sport. I don't know that. I mean,
It is a
it's
weird
sort of
sport.
it's a
How tall is
muscle.
she? You have the stats on the men. How tall is she?
She is 5'6", 117 pounds.
Interesting.
27 years old. Again, I would say she came out of nowhere, but to be honest, she won one of the other marathon majors last year, so it's not like she's unheard of. She just wasn't necessarily the top of the list as far as women goes. Um, when she smashed the world record wearing the Adidas Super Shoes,
Yeah.
Again, I'm not going to take anything away from her. I mean, whether you're wearing super shoes or not, they're all wearing super shoes. Two, you still got to be an absolutely amazing athlete to blow the world record by 2 minutes. So,
Oh, for
um,
sure.
yeah, she's an Ethiopian athlete. And what's a little bit odd is um, like Kenyan men seem to be more dominant than so Kenyan and Ethiopia, as we talked about last year or last podcast, was they dominate marathoners, both men.
Hmm.
Kenyan men seem to dominate a little bit more than Ethiopian men, but it's the inverse on
Hmm.
women. Ethiopian women, and I don't think it's just a one-off. I think it tends to be consistently that it's Ethiopian women in two of the top three spots with maybe a Kenyan runner in there occasionally. So Assefa though she is Ethiopian. Um, the second runner we were going to highlight was one of my favorites, Safan Hassan. And
Yeah.
I like and I heard about her like in 2020. She did the Olympics and she was trying for the 5,000, 10,000, and the 1,500 meters, which is unheard of. To do
Hmm.
three major events, two long distance ones, when you're dealing with, you know, trials, sometimes quarterfinals, semifinals, finals, right? Not all of them have those, but you're running multiple races in the Olympics, and depending on where they break day to day, it's almost impossible to do. And she won the gold medal in the 5,000 and 10,000 meters, and I think she was the bronze in the 1,500 meters. So an absolute outstanding accomplishment. So I just from watching the Olympics last year, or sorry, 3 years ago, um, she was on my radar screen, and I saw she had her first marathon was the London Marathon, which I think you saw either highlights of or the race itself. I watched it and was recommending for anyone who wants to watch a marathon, a dramatic marathon. This was a fantastic 2023 London Marathon. Just watch it. Focus on the women. Safan Hassan, her first marathon, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know what mile somewhere in the first half, maybe around halfway point, she had to stop to stretch out. I don't know if it was her hips or hip flexors or what was
I
being
think
stretched.
I can't remember what she said. We saw her doing like a quad stretch at one
Yeah.
point. But I believe she said it was a hip flexor thing, but I could be totally wrong. But yeah, it was about at like 19 kilometers in, she had to stop to stretch. Um,
So she's running with the basically the top 5 or 6 or 8 girls that are running, girls, women that are running at that same time. So she's in the lead pack, stops to do those stretches, which you would never see. And everyone was, and the announcers are like, "Oh, it's done. She's done. She's not going to be able to come back. Is she going to drop out?" Because once someone stops to do something like that, it's very rare you could then get back into the race and then finish in the top. She not
oh
only
my
got
gosh.
back in, and it was a long haul. I mean, they kept focusing on her, saying like, "Hey, you can see her back way back there. She's still chasing the lead pack," and it took her 5 to 10 miles or so to catch them, but she got back in the lead pack and then outkicked them to the end. Not to, again, I should have said spoiler alert. She wins the race. She wins the race.
But no, definitely watch it because if you don't want to watch all of it, obviously I understand that, but watching the end because it is super exciting. And I feel like she's a little theatrical, which is fun of like you can tell she has no, like, she's like, how is this happening? You see her doing like the shoulder check the entire, spoiler alert, to like, she's doing the shoulder check as she's making her way down the stretch, like how they're not there. It's just me. But no, it is very cool to watch. Super exciting. But yeah, I mean, if you hear any long distance runner, especially marathoner, talking, elite runners talking about, any of their races and mistakes they've made or whatever, and it's like you lose contact with the front if you're unable to stick with the leaders, you're kind of done, your race is out. I know Kara Goucher talks about that a lot in her book of like when she's I don't remember what races she's talking about, but she's often talking about like being able to stick with the pack, being able to see the pack in the front. So that is like a death sentence, you would think, and it did not happen for her. She was determined. So yeah, super cool. Definitely check that out, even if you're like not super into watching running.
Yeah, yeah. So no, it was definitely great, and just again, a little more accolades about her real quick is Her second marathon was the Chicago Marathon, also in 2023, and she's run the second fastest marathon of all time in her second
Crazy.
race. Yeah, so
Crazy.
she's crazy talented. My money's that and she's 30 years old, so she's a little older um, than Assefa, who's 27 years old. Hassan's 5'7", 108 pounds. Again, they're all in that probably the same very thin category. Um, and not that we're trying to do not to focus on weight for people because I know that can be a trigger.
I know
Um,
I'm shocked about the heights of everybody though. Not I was shocked that Kipchoge's not as tall as I thought. And that the women are very similar heights to him, but I'm shocked that Kiptum's so tall.
yeah,
You said what, 5'11"?
I think he was 5'11". Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So yeah, it is, and I didn't see them running in the same race together. I don't know that in the last, like, yeah, I don't think they actually run the same race together. Kipchoge and Kiptum, at least in these few marathon majors, they haven't been in the same race. Um,
Let's
so
talk about our
Stefan,
last runner, or do you still have more things to say about Stefan?
I just didn't say she's great again one last time, just so I can get that out there. I got my little crush on her. Um,
Apparently.
yeah, and then I think the other I'll call a equivalent to Kipchoge, right? Like we talked about how long his career has been and how long he's been at the top. Paula Radcliffe, I don't think she wasn't at the top the same amount of time, but she was the best marathoner in the world for probably 5 or 6 years, maybe 5 years range. But her world record stood for 16 years. That's a testament to how good she was. She was the again the I'll call it the genetic freak. She was the freak who was able to put the world record out of reach for everyone for 16 years. And it's really only been since the super shoes have come out that her world record has fallen. So yeah, so that just gives you sort of a sense on how high she set the bar. Um, so her heyday was in the 2002 to 2008 range. Um, I don't think she ever won an Olympic medal, Olympic gold. She didn't get she did not have a gold medal in the Olympics. Um, no, she's won some world championships, but I think it just didn't work out timing wise. I think she finished actually way back in the pack in one of her Olympic games. Just didn't have a good day. She wasn't healthy going into it. So even though she may have been favored, I think she knew training wise it just wasn't where she wanted to be. So
Wow.
yeah, I think it wasn't. We didn't say as much about her about as Stefan Hassan. Paula Radcliffe's time has passed, but she again in the early 2000s, she was all there was in marathon running.
I don't know much about Paula, but I literally only heard people talking about her or her being mentioned in when I was reading Kara's book. I think was the first time I really heard about it. Because again, I didn't really follow marathons too much.
Yeah, so I
Um,
think she was just a little earlier than Kara. So Kara, they did
mm-hmm,
overlap. I think they ran in some of the same races together
mm-hmm.
because they both were obviously marathon runners. If you look at her Wikipedia page, I know people poo-poo Wikipedia, but it is very good for things like number of world championships, number of medals they've won. Um, there's usually a great chart, and her chart's pretty long as far as how either world championships. She's got a couple of those. She's got world cross country championships, a number of those between gold, silver, and bronze. World half marathon championships. She's got 3 golds there. So she's was very accomplished runner, and again, best in the world for a long period of time, and deserved, I thought, mentioning on this podcast.
Oh, for sure. I feel like that's all we have though on all things marathon. That was quite a lot of content.
I was going to swear this was going to be our shortest episode, and we somehow we managed to stretch it out into another hour.
Yeah, I know. I'm kind of shocked. I feel like there's a million things that you guys need to be checking out now. Breaking Two is one of them. Watching was it 2023 London Marathon.
Yeah.
Um, check out that creatine podcast from Trail Runner Nation. Make sure you check out the Player's Plate and Planted Runner books on nutrition. I feel like those are things we talked about too. If you're feeling motivated to run a marathon, maybe watch Brittany runs a marathon. Hate it. But everybody seems to love that movie. And we talked about it in one of our episodes.
And by the way, just to tie it into this podcast, she had a stress fracture too that
She
took her out of that first
did.
marathon. So it goes into our injury section.
There you go. But if you want to hear us talk about Brittany Wins a Marathon, check out, I think it's the first only movie chat we've done, movie chat episode. We talk about Brittany Wins a Marathon. Anything else as we're signing off from this comprehensive guide on marathons brought to you by a Jeff special?
Yeah, sign up for the Rhode Island Marathon. Apparently, that's the one we're going to all go to and start January 1st for your training. Do your 16 weeks, which would be 4 months approximately. So there's probably a little bit of cushion in there where you can make it a 17-week program. So there you go.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you rate, review, subscribe, all the things that you can do for a podcast that you enjoy listening to. Make sure you check out social media, our website, any of those things. If you have questions, comments, interview requests, feel free to email me at maracuyrunclub@gmail.com.